Good morning, guys. Okay, so we are now starting on function notation. This is 3, 4, and evaluating functions that kind of go one hand in hand. Okay. Equations that represent functions are often written in what's called function notation. That's just the fancy math way for writing y, is what it really boils down to. Because when we would have the equation y equals 4x minus 1, when you write it in function notation, you're going to put an f parentheses x close parentheses, and this is the exact same as the y. It's just called the function notation. It's the mathematical function way of writing y equals 4x minus 1. Notice the only thing that changed was instead of writing y, we write f parentheses x parentheses. And this is read as f of x equals, and then the rest of the rule. When you're looking at this, the f of x, or the f parentheses x, is the output, or the y value, and x is the input. And if you remember the output, it also referred to as the dependent variable. And the x is the input or the independent variable. Might remember from end of the year last year where we talked about all these words that meant the same thing. Output, dependent, effect, input was independent, and cause. Effect, and then this one was cause. These are all some of the words that we used. Okay, so if we're looking at this, function notation is especially useful for finding a value in the range, which remember that's y, that corresponds to the certain domain, which is x. So if you're given the domain, the x value, you can easily find the range, which is the y. So for instance here, f of x, if f of x equals 4x minus 1, find f of negative 7. That just means that x equals negative 7. So we plug negative 7 in for the x in the rule and solve, or actually simplify. We don't solve and simplify because at that point it's not an equation. We're just simplifying. That's big there because some of us are going to want to solve, but we're not solving, we're simplifying. So I'm going to now have 4 times negative 7 minus 1, which is going to give me negative 28, minus 1, which gives me negative 29. Notice I did not write anything in this spot. I'm just going to come down here, and now I'm going to write that this is what this equals. So therefore, so when it's f of negative 7, so when x is negative 7, then I'm going to end up with f of negative 7 is equal to negative 29, which means negative 29 is my y value. This is the answer that I write. F of negative 7 equals negative 29. Okay, let's work a couple of examples now. Okay, here we go. We'll start with number 3. Okay, so we're just plugging in. It says h of, that's still function notation. Okay, if it says g of, it's still function notation because the x is inside that parentheses right there. That's the input. So it tells me that the 9 is in the x spot. So I'm going to plug it in for this x here, not for this one over here. So don't plug in there. This is just telling me that x equals 9. So now I'm going to have 2/3 times 9. And I'm going to make that into a fraction because this is a fraction. Minus 1. So now I'm going to simplify. If I can simplify, simplify. So here we go. 3 goes into 3 one time, 3 goes into 9 3 times, and now we multiply straight across. 2 times 3 is 6 minus 1 is 5. So 5 is equal to h of 9. If I wanted to write that as an ordered pair, okay, remember this is the y value. So if I were writing this in ordered pair, it would be 9, 5. And this is what it is as an ordered pair. But that's not what it's asking right now. It just wants to know what is h of 9. And the h of 9 is 5. Okay, next example. Let's look at number 5. Here we go. So for number 5, again, I'm just taking this as telling me that x equals 5. So I'm going to take this 5 and I'm going to plug it in for this x, and I'm also going to plug it in for this x here. Notice I'm not plugging it in here. I don't mess with this at all. I'm only messing with the right-hand side. You need to draw a wall to keep you from fooling with over here. You don't fool with that. You are only simplifying. So now I'm going to have negative, open parentheses, 5 squared. Now, if this were a negative 5, you have to write the parentheses. So just get in the habit. Go ahead and write the parentheses when you're plugging something in. Plus 6 times 5, because some of you make careless errors or errors right here because of the negatives and throwing all things off. Minus 4. And I end up with negative 25, because 5 squared, I have to do the 5 squared, and at the same time I can do this multiplication, 6 times 5, which is 30 minus 4. And now I do my order of operations. So I'm going to end up with 5 minus 4, which then gives me 1. So therefore, f of 5 equals 1. Okay, next example. Number 8. Give you one guess why that is. The absolute value symbols. Ooh, I'm doing that. Threw things off. Here we go. All right, so again, what this is telling me right now is that x equals negative 7. So I'm going to take this negative 7 and I'm going to plug it in for everything inside. Remember that absolute value symbols are a form of a grouping symbol. Okay, so I'm going to have absolute value of negative 7 minus, I'm plugging into something squared, so I'm putting that in parentheses, negative 7 squared, absolute value. I've got to work everything inside the absolute value symbols first. I'm not doing the double negative because that's multiplication. I have to do the squared first. So we are squaring this first, and it still stays inside the absolute value symbol. So I'm going to have absolute value negative 7 minus negative 7 squared, which is 49, absolute value. Now I work what's inside the absolute value symbols. So that's going to give me a negative 56. Yes. Absolute value is negative 56. And now I take the absolute value. And the absolute value of negative 56 is 56 from 0. So therefore, the answer here is going to be g of negative 7 equals 56. All right. Next example. Going down to number 11. Okay. This is where we've got functions along with stuff going on outside of it. Okay. So we have our rules over here. Since it says f of 4, since it has an f here, that means I'm choosing the rule over here that has an f. So I'm going to have f of, well, what I'm going to do, since it's f of 4, that means I'm plugging in the rule 8 minus 3x plus 9. And then I'm going to take this 4 and I'm going to plug it in for this x in my next step. So I'm going to have 8 minus 3 times 4 plus 9. And now we follow order of operations. We're simplifying. Use simplify. So we have 8 minus 12 plus 9. And we just follow our order of operations. 8 minus 12 is negative 4 plus 9, which gives me my final answer of 5. So we would say f of 4 plus 9 equals 5. Okay, let's see. Let's look at number 15. I want to make sure we talk about the word problem and so forth down there. For 15, this is where we're working backwards, okay? So when I'm looking at this, it tells me that f of x equals negative 13. That's another way of saying that y equals negative 13. So remember, I'm using these rules up here because it says f. So therefore, I'm going to have, I can rewrite this rule if I want to be y equals 8 minus 3x. If it makes it easier for you to understand, to change that to a y, I guess I should have said that at the beginning. You can easily do that. I do not have a problem with that. Just understand when you see it on test, f of x is the same as y. Okay, so now we plug in our information. We know that the negative 13 is equal to the y, so I'm going to plug that in. And now I'm solving, okay? So plug in and now solve. Plug in and now solve. So I'm going to have negative 13 equals 8 minus 3x. And we solve. So I'm going to subtract 8 from both sides. And I end up with 21. Negative 21 equals a negative 3x. Be careful. Remember that negative to break down, so because some of us still like to forget that. And then we divide by a negative 3. And we end up with x equals, that cancels, that zeroes out, 7. So remember, when it gives you the f of x equals already what that number is, then that's y equals that number. So y equals negative 13. So now I'm solving for the x. So in this situation, we solve. All right, let's look at this word problem. Okay. So it says, anthropologists use the length of certain bones of the human skeleton to estimate the height of the living person. Okay. One of these bones is the femur. To estimate the height in centimeters of a female with a femur length of x, the function can be used. Find h of 46 and explain its meaning. That's a bunch of words that all it really wants you to do is look at the question. You want to read it to make sure there's not anything curveballs they throw you, but it says to find h of 46. I want to know what is y when x equals 46. That is the underlying question right here. They want to know what is y when x equals 46. So that means I'm going to take this 46 and I'm going to plug it in for this x right here. So I'm going to have 61 h of x equals 61.41 plus 2.32 times 46. And we get to use a calculator. So I punch that in. 61 0.41 plus 2.32 times 46, which gives me that h of 46 equals 168.13. But now we got to think about, what does that mean? Okay. That means female with femur length of 46 centimeters has height of 168.13 centimeters. This is the answer to the question. So you got to make sure that you describe, because it is a word problem. All right, last little section here. Okay, given the graph of each, find each function value. Remember when we did these over on the first page, I told you how to write them as an ordered pair. I have to write those. That's kind of the thinking that we're going to do. Remember that when we're looking at this, okay, it's kind of easy when it's from a graph. You're wanting to graph, given the graph of f of x, find each function value. So we want to know, what is the y value when x is -3? Okay. What is y value when given x? All right, so right now I know that my x is -3. So I'm going to go to the -3, 1, 2, 3, and I'm going to see, where does it hit on my graph? It hits right there. There's A. So therefore, my answer is, where is it hitting on the x-axis? 2. So therefore, my answer is 2. If I'm looking at 19, all right, I want to look at 0. So where is it crossing? B, right here. So therefore, it's at origin. So therefore, this answer is 0. If it's at -4, 1, 2, 3, 4, -4, I'm looking to see, it's up here. There's A. Where does it hit? 2. Finish the notes and then work on the classwork homework. And then we'll talk about how much we have, depending upon how long this takes you. Have a great day.